Hi, Dave here from RC Pilots. Thanks for checking out this video. I hope it's of use to anybody who's thinking of getting into flying helicopters, and in particular connected pitch helicopters, the ones that give you the ability to perform acrobatic maneuvers other than just going around in circles and figures of eights. There's loads of videos out there about all of these different helicopters in this range. For me, it's boiled down to two. I looked at big helicopters and small ones. The big ones I found looked great in the sky, but they got damaged very, very easily. And when you're learning to fly helicopters, you're going to have a lot of crashes. It's unavoidable. You're not trying if you don't have crashes. So that brings us back to small helicopters or micro-sized ones. And these seem to be two very, very popular options. As I said, I know there's loads of videos out there showing their capabilities, so I'm presuming you have a fairly good idea of what they're capable of. What this is about really is helping you maybe decide if you're trying to look at the XK range or the Blade Nano range. So first off, they're lovely and small. There's similarities there that they're lovely and small. The S3 is slightly smaller, making it better suited to indoor flight or maybe flying outdoors in very light winds. The XK is a bit bigger and it can take the outdoors a bit better, but both of them are small, they're light, they will get chucked around the place. Okay, so they're both small and lightweight. Lightweight makes them very good for taking crashes and smashes and bad flying, of which I've exposed them to loads. This is slightly bigger, slightly heavier. It takes an enormous amount of knocks, but it can break. In particular, the weak spot with the K110 is the boom. There's a kind of snap there. That's a problem. But the good thing about small, lightweight helicopters like these is that they're cheap to get parts. So you might have to wait a few weeks to get them in, but at least they're affordable. And things are going to break when you're learning to fly, so having a cheap aircraft or helicopter to fly in is a huge plus. Gyro assist, very, very important. When you're learning to fly, it just helps stabilize the helicopter. It doesn't stop it drifting. It will drift, unlike drones and so on with GPS. There's nothing like that. But at least it brings it back to level if you're unsure. Huge plus when you're learning to fly. Gyro is something you want to get rid of as soon as you begin to feel comfortable. But for those early stages, the gyro is a great plus. Works very well on both of them. Some subtle differences to talk about in a moment. That might be very important for some people, but gyro is there, it's good. 3D capable, they're capable of, fairly basic acrobatics, which is basically where I'm at. Capable of flying inverted, doing loops, rolls, all sort of fairly basic stuff. It's not going to do it particularly well because the batteries are ridiculously small. So they're not going to have much power, but they can do it, particularly when you're flying maybe indoors or there's very light winds. So they'll get you to the stage where you learn to fly a helicopter and move on to flying acrobatic maneuvers. These are hugely capable. So again, very similar there, and the parts are nice and affordable. What about the differences? And that's where maybe your preference for one type of brand over another might begin to show through. Blade Nano have their own following. They bulletproof spectrum software and hardware. Really, really very good in my experience. XK has very good gear as well. Somewhat more affordable, so maybe cheaper. This radio I loved. I've got loads of helicopters flying using this X6 radio, which is only $50–$60. Spectrum gear is a lot more expensive. If you go buying Spectrum radios, you really are committing. If you have Spectrum gear already for flying planes and so on, brilliant. But if you're trying to decide, you're just dipping your toe in the water for flying helicopters, you might want to go with the XK. Also, another attractive feature of the XK is that it's bigger, slightly bigger, so it's slightly more powerful and a little bit easier to see outdoors. Nice red canopy. The smaller fella's blue, he flies away a little bit easier, so you need to keep him nice and close. So, subtle differences beginning to show through there. I think something that really is significant and really does matter is when you get into a sticky situation and you hit panic. You either knock back on your gyro here, or you hit the panic button here. And that's where the Blade just is vastly superior. No matter what orientation you're in with this little blade, doesn't matter. You hit panic and she goes straight back, level, and gives you those vital few moments to decide and figure out what's happening. XK is a little bit less predictable. If you happen to be flying inverted and you get panicked and you need to get yourself back up, sometimes re-engaging gyro actually doesn't bring it back up. It keeps her inverted, level, but inverted, which is really not what you want. I'd say, in fact, this self-rights maybe 7 times out of 10 in my hands, but there's 3 times out of 10 that it doesn't. And if you're panicked and you're inverted, chances are you're going to crash, and that might be when you break your mast. That's a big letdown. It really is. This is a vastly superior recovery mechanism. So, where does it leave you? I'm inclined to think, okay, if you're new to helicopters, go with the XK. Okay, the gyro system isn't perfect, but it really helps bring you on your learning skills a lot, and it's very affordable, cheap parts. If you happen flying Spectrum gear, you're familiar with Blade stuff, this is a fantastic package. Absolutely terrific, particularly if you're flying indoors or in light winds. It doesn't take heavy winds well. This with the gyro off really does take heavy winds surprisingly well. It just dig your nose in and she pulls away through. She has that little bit more power. My favourite is the XK, but that's not to be critical of the Nano. In my hands, I'm learning better with the XK. Somebody else might learn better with the Spectrum. But at least we've discussed the different features, and I hope you find this useful. So, thanks for watching. Talk to you again soon.